from the heart. That's a big statement, and maybe for you, a scary one. It is also the title of this episode and the book written by today's guest. Our conversation today is nothing less than a roadmap for leading successfully into the future. Welcome to another live episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, their organizations, and the world. If you're listening to this podcast, you could have been live. And so in the future, you could be with us live for episodes on your favorite social channel. You can get the information about those live episodes and therefore interact with us and see them sooner by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn. Today's episode is brought to you by Remarkable Development Sessions. A Remarkable Development Session is a webinar for a new world. We know that we learn in interaction with others, but in a fractured, increasingly virtual world, the workshop experience has been shifted to a focus on delivering the content, leading the application to you as an individual. Even if you love learning from webinars, you've likely thought there has to be an even better way to make the webinar better than they are. And if you are thinking that, go to kevineikenberry.com/remarkable development to learn more about these sessions and to register for an upcoming session on a valuable skill. And with that, it's time to bring in our guest. And there you can see him. And if I can get my screen back, I will introduce him to you all. And we'll get started. Our guest today is Mark C. Crowley. He is a recognized visionary in workplace management, engagement, and culture, three of my favorite topics. When the first edition of his book, Lead from the Heart, Transformational Leadership for the 21st Century, was published over a decade ago, many business leaders were slow to embrace it and misinterpreted the title as being synonymous with soft, weak, and ineffective management. Today, his philosophy on heart-led leadership has launched a global movement, and Forbes magazine calls his ideas visionary and the blueprint for the future of workplace leadership. As a global speaker and consultant, Crowley is a regular contributor to Fast Company magazine and Great Britain's CEO magazine. His work has been published everywhere, places like USA Today, Huffington Post, and many more. He has released a revised and updated version of the book, Lead from the Heart, and hosts a podcast with the same name. And today he is our guest. I'm so glad that he's here. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. Beautiful introduction. I appreciate that.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's easy to introduce someone who's done important stuff. So what I want to do first is sort of get a picture of how we got to this place, right? So over a decade ago, you write this book. You've been talking about it, working with organizations on it ever since. What led you to come to focus on that? What led you to the focus on leading from the heart?
So it's actually a fantastic place to start. And the answer is it's been a lifelong journey. So I was in my 40s, Kevin, when somebody said to me, a woman who had worked for me for almost 20 years, she said, you realize that you manage people very differently compared to anyone around here, and especially your peers. And at this point, I was already in a senior role in financial institutions, financial services. And what she challenged me to do with that was to look to see, what am I doing differently and why am I doing it differently? And without going into the details of it, it represents the preface of my book. My upbringing was not one you would want for your own child. Let's just put it that way. My mom died when I was very young. My father was psychologically and emotionally abusive to the point that he pretty much whittled away my self-esteem. And right at the point when he had perfected his execution of that, he kicked me out of the house right before I was going to go to college, right after high school. And so I had to kind of fend for myself. And so her name was Cecilia. When she said, you realize you manage people very differently, Kevin, what I came to the understanding of this epiphany was I had been managing people my entire career aligned to giving people what I had always wanted with my upbringing and the way that I was raised and the way that I was led, if you will, under the belief that if I gave that to them, they would be infinitely more successful, because that's what I believed about myself. When I graduated from college, I looked around at the people. I was feeling great relief for graduating for college. A lot of the people that were my friends weren't feeling relief. They were going off to Harvard Business School, or they were going to law school, or they were, and I'm feeling like, man, I'm just so lucky to have gotten through here. What's the difference between us? And so the difference between us were things like having somebody have your back, knowing that you had a place to go that was safe. Safety was a huge thing for me at that point in my life, and I didn't have that. Having somebody who would thoughtfully direct me and make me feel valued and appreciated and effectively loved. Like, how'd you do in your class? Great. Congratulations. Did well in a paper? Fantastic. I had none of that. So when I gave this to people, I could see that people were thriving and doing incredible things. And I never questioned how I was managing. It was like, it's like a flow chart. You're just getting yes, 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 and just keep going, thinking this is all the way everybody does it. And it was only at that point that I realized I'm managing people fundamentally differently, because I was raised fundamentally differently, and it influenced me to break all the rules of leadership.
Do it differently, right? Because that didn't
Completely
work.
differently.
I got something different.
And in a way that we were advised not to. So I'll stop there.
Well, yeah. So advised not to, I opened by saying leading from the heart might be kind of a scary statement to some people. So I guess I'll say it this way, and you sort of answered it in a way, but sort of going out of your story and into the world, like, why our hearts and not our minds, right? Because that's where most people think about leadership, certainly in the past, for sure. We lead with our head. It's about the numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So why our hearts and not our minds?
So it's not an either or question. It's a both and.
That's fair.
So,
that's fair.
Right?
Yeah.
So the reason that the book is called Lead from the Heart and not Lead from the Heart and Mind is because we don't lead with any amount of heart. It's like devoid in business. We think it's soft. We think it's weak. We think it's sentimental. We think it's going to get us into trouble. We hear the word heart, and we have this fantasy that it's a Valentine heart, not the biological heart. We can get into the science of this in a minute, but the big issue is that we think caring about people is going to harm productivity, vis-a-vis harm profitability. And so why would we want to do that, right? So, but I'm not saying, I want to make sure that I'm clear that data analysis, all the analytical things that we're supposed to do, we have to keep doing that. But we also have to learn to care about our people, because that's where the payoff comes from.
Yeah, so it's a both and, right? Not an either or. So I didn't probably ask it the best way. So let me ask it a slightly different way. What's the business case for what you just said? Like, what's the business case for doing what you're suggesting?
Well, first of all, what I'm suggesting, let's narrow this thing down. So we have always believed that work was a transactional relationship. I pay you to do a job, and if you do a good job, I might give you a bonus, but principally you get to keep your job. And if you don't do a good job, I'm going to find somebody else to do it. And so there's always this tension. There's always this sort of fear that if I don't deliver on this, that my job is in jeopardy. And so we've always kept people under a certain dimension of fear, worry, intimidation, all of that, in the belief that this is going to translate into higher productivity. When in fact, we know that human beings are hardwired to thrive on, like, we are born, nature made it so that we are here to thrive on positive emotions, like at least a relationship of 4, maybe even 5 to 1 positive emotions to negative emotions. That's when we thrive. That's when we have optimal performance. And so if you're marinating in fear and thinking my boss doesn't like me, or my boss isn't, I might be getting a bad review, or I'm not going to get a bonus, or, I could be out the door if I don't deliver on this constantly. Well, we're actually letting people experience the very worst of what sets them up for optimal performance. We're undermining their performance. So that's traditional leadership theory. What I'm saying is that by virtue of caring about people, by appreciating them, by growing them, giving them your time, developing them, coaching them, All of those things translate into the positive emotions that we know lead to optimal human performance. So the belief was, if I care about people, they're going to come in and go, well, Kevin, you told me I was doing a great job yesterday. So I told my wife, and the first thing she said was, give me a raise.
Show me the money, right? Exactly.
Yeah. Go to Kevin and get a raise, well, you said I was doing a good job, so shouldn't I get promoted? Like, shouldn't I be a VP or whatever? And so managers go, well, I don't want to go down that road. Why would I want to do that? Like, I don't want to have to waste my energy having to do that. And so my experience of managing people my entire career this way is that they don't. They're like, thank you for saying it. They go home and they tell their spouse, Kevin said I'm doing a great job. The conversation ends there. Kevin must be a good manager for thanking you because you are great, and so we're all winning. The conversation of go back and exploit the praise that you just got never happens, but that's our fantasy.
So what, you've been living this and writing it and now teaching it and coaching it for a long time. What's other than that? And I've certainly heard that what if before. Other than that, what are the biggest pushback or resistance that you get from leaders when you encourage them to think about leading differently?
Another good question. So the big one, of course, is the elephant in the room, which is the word heart just sends people into, a frenzy of like anybody that uses love or anyone who uses the word lead from the heart doesn't get business. He's never worked in the real world, doesn't understand how to drive performance. It's like game over for a lot of people, and they don't understand what I'm talking about. And what I'm talking about is that feelings and emotions and the heart itself play an oversized role in influencing human behavior. And we think we're rational. Descartes said hundreds and hundreds of years ago, I think, therefore I am. But that's not the way it works. Feelings and emotions are driving our behavior up to 95% of the time. So you say, well, you made a decision to buy a Mercedes over a BMW. You did that rationally. Oh yeah, I looked at the numbers and I looked at the warranty and I looked at, but if you unwind it, what they really loved was, the blue color of that BMW just like made me feel really great. But it's not transparent to them. They're like, no,
Mark,
Mark,
right? How did you know that the first BMW I bought, my wife picked out blue? How did you know that? It's all about that. In fact, our feelings lead even to what we think, right? Well, what we think as well as how we behave is 100% correct. I want to get at something that you say in the book, which I agree with 150%, which, I'll start here. There's like a whole cottage industry around employee engagement, right? And lots of people like you and I are writing about it and talking about it and doing stuff related to employee engagement. And so a lot of it's being done, like, what are the numbers that we need to drive to build engagement? And you say, and again, I agree 150%, that engagement is a decision of the heart. So talk to us about that, because that's something more now than ever. People are saying they want from their folks. And yet you're saying even that, like, wait a minute, you got to think about that differently than perhaps you already are.
Well, it takes us to what we were just talking about, which is this idea that emotional energy is really what motivates us. It's not rational thinking, right? So how we make people feel is the great influencer. So if somebody comes in and says, hey, Kevin, if you work hard today, we might be able to get our customer service scores from a 2.81 to a 2.87. Does that do anything for you? And does it do anything for the organization? We could argue no. But it's really, hey, how about we together come up with some objectives that will make us feel good about what we're accomplishing here? It's a different approach, but it starts with how do you make people feel? But the other thing is that positive emotions translate to things like appreciation, attention, joy, all those kinds of experiences. So if I say to you, hey, Kevin, I happen to see that you did a lot of preparation for this. And a lot of the people that I've been interviewed by don't do that kind of work. So I just want to compliment you. How does that make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel good. I don't know how much work other people put in, but I know how much I do. So
Right?
sure, it makes me feel good, right? For sure.
What if I ignored that? What if I ignored that? What if you did that and you had me back on and you did the same thing and you're asking me these intelligent questions that only could have happened because you're looking at the book, you've read the book, and you've done all this work, and I never acknowledge it. It's
Well,
a myth.
it's an interesting thing because what I started to say, or what I was thinking about when you continued was, well, if this is just a one-time thing, it doesn't make that big of a difference, right? It probably helps with that positive reinforcement probably helps me with my next interview with the next guest. But until you come back, I mean, it's not the same because as a leader, we're interacting with our folks, hopefully every day, all the time, right? So in that regard, it's quite different. But in both cases, both you and I and my team, it matters a lot. It matters a lot.
How does it matter in our relationship? So when we're done, what are you going to remember about Mark Crowley? What are you going to remember about our conversation? That he took the time to acknowledge all the time and effort that I put into supporting him. And what's really fascinating to me, you mentioned it in your introduction, I have a podcast myself, and I've had some extraordinary people on, Kevin, that never thought. This guy did an incredible amount of work, and he's leveraging his own network to promote my work. Would it be like that big of a deal to come back and just say, thank you for everything you did to support me? But a lot of people don't. And I think this is what happens in business, is that we just think, oh, Kevin knows I think he's doing a good job. Kevin, he doesn't need to be told.
He doesn't need to be told by me. Like, I'm sure someone else is telling him. He's doing
right.
it, right?
Yeah, or he already knows. What do I need to tell him for? Or even worse, it's going to go to his head. He's going to start walking around here like some big shot and that's not the way it works. It simply isn't the way it works. When you make people feel, and that has, by the way, that can't be fabricated. It has to be authentic. Like, you're a great guy, Kevin. Nobody believes that. Not the language, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Nobody believes that. But, what I'm saying is that it has to come from your heart to go to the heart. And sorry for that. But it's true. But if you do that, people will do more to get that feeling again. And you can't manipulate that either, but it becomes this reciprocity where if you're the boss and you are making people feel something that they don't ordinarily feel, they're going to want to do extraordinary work for you. And that was really my great epiphany, was that people will scale mountains for you if they know you care about them, and truly believe that you want the best for them, and that you show that to them every single day.
Yeah, it's an unassailable truth. There's a comment that came in from someone on LinkedIn, and I'll read it so that you can think about how you want to respond. Employee compliance or engagement. Top down will accomplish compliance. Engagement requires influence relationship across the organization in all directions. And I know we're going to get at relationships and connection in a second, but is there anything about that comment that you want to say, Mark?
Yeah. You can mandate everybody has to be in their desk by 8:00, and that's fine. You're going to get people to be there because it's going to be compliance. But if you want to inspire somebody to be thinking about their job after they leave at night, like, what can I bring? That situation, that challenge I'm faced with, like, how can I solve that? If you want people using discretionary effort to think about that and even care about that, it can't be about compliance. It has to be about inspiration. People have to be inspired to do that kind of thing. They have to feel that there's a win for them to be able to make an incremental contribution. So if you just want compliance, just mandate whatever it is that you want and manage with a proverbial whip. And that's completely the antithesis of everything I'm talking about.
Exactly. Well, I often frame it as a leader, the most fundamental question you have to ask yourself is, do I want compliance or do I want commitment? It's exactly what you're saying, right? You have to make that decision. And the way that you lead is significantly different across those two decisions. And you talk about 4 practices in the book, Mark, that we probably won't have time to unpack them all. So let me just say the 4, and then let's pick one to talk about. How about that? So the 4 are
Okay.
hire people with heart, which we don't spend enough time thinking about, connect on a personal level, maximize human potential, and inspire the heart. Those are the 4 practices.
Mhm.
And we don't have time to unpack them all. So which one do you want to dive into today?
How about you pick?
How did I know you were going to say that? I had a feeling. So I want to talk about the connection one, and I'll tell you why I want to talk about that one, because I think that that's something that all of us can make a shift on quickly. And I think that in the world today, certainly for many leaders who are leading people now at a distance, some or all of the time, this has become more of a topic, I think, in the last couple of years. So what does it mean? What does this practice look like of connecting on a personal level?
So were you intuitive or clairvoyant there? How'd you get that connect on a personal level slide up there so fast?
I have all 4 of them on here.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, it's very impressive. You didn't have to disclose that.
Well, yeah, I did. Anyway, go ahead. Because I don't believe in trying to. First of all, my team would tell you if Kevin was trying to type while he's doing this, it wouldn't have been very good. So,
all right. So the thing is that we all want to be known. We all want to have our boss know who we are, know who we're trying to become, know what makes us happy. I'll give you an example. I had an assistant. She edited my book the first time. She worked for me. We worked together for 15 years. And one day in a meeting, I just told everybody from my entire team, I just said, Susan's just, you guys don't know this because you don't work with her all the time, but I want you to know what extraordinary work she does for me every single day. It's just amazing. And it was true. And when she left, when everybody left, she came into my office and she said, don't you ever do that again to me. And I was like, what? Like I'm giving you recognition. And she's like, I don't like that kind of public recognition.
Not in the group.
So
no, thank you.
I use it as an example of, we think the golden rule is what should be driving us. And I would have wanted the recognition for doing the kind of work that she was doing. It was exceptional, consistently exceptional. She didn't. And so the platinum rule is do unto others as they want you to do unto them. So that means if I'm going to not do things that make her uncomfortable and do the things that will make her be happy, I need to find out what those are. And so that means spending time with people, getting to know them personally, and not being seduced into saying, hey, Kevin, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? And they go, oh, well, before we get too deep into that, where are you on that project? You have to just keep it focused where it's just dedicated to getting to know Kevin, and you just can't do it once. It has to be regular and consistent.
I want to go back to where you're with the specific example, because I don't want anyone, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am in this situation. It's not like your teammate didn't want the recognition, didn't want the feedback, didn't want the appreciation. She just didn't want it publicly.
Correct.
And
You're
so
right.
I just don't want anyone to leave that and say, well, that means I don't, that person just says they don't need it. That's not it. What she said is don't do it in front of the group again. That doesn't work for me.
Correct. But if I never told her she was doing a good job, she'd be very unhappy. She wanted it from me.
I just didn't want that to get lost. And if all we ever do is talk about the work and the weather, transact the business, we'll never get to knowing those kinds of things about our teammates, right?
A lot of people aren't willing to put in the time, Kevin. They think it's either a waste of time, they think it's a drain of time, or as I was saying, they begin it, they get into it, and then something inside of them says, this isn't a productive use of time. What's a productive use of time is, where are you in the project? When are you going to hit these numbers? When am I getting your report? And so we just hijack it. And the interesting thing, going back to the fundamental premise, which is that feelings and emotions drive human behavior. If you say to me, Mark, I really want to get to know you. I want to spend more time. I want to know if there's any life challenges. For example, if I've got an elderly parent that I'm caring for, it'd be helpful for you to know that. If I've got a child I'm trying to take to school before I come to work, whatever, knowing these things can help you make accommodations that can make a big difference in my life. That makes me realize that Kevin really cares about me. But the only way you're going to get there is by having the conversation. And if you sidetrack it by merging the productivity aspect in what you think you should be using this time for, people feel that Kevin doesn't give a shit about me at all. He just cares about the numbers. And the minute that happens, you shut people down. Pardon the vernacular there.
Listen. My boss just watched some darn podcast, listened to some podcast that said they ought to get to know their people, but they didn't really want that, right? I'm just playing the story.
Exactly.
So I think it's absolutely right. And when people know we care, it changes everything. Here's my observation about your point, Mark, where people say, well, I don't have time to do that as a leader. But when I talk to leaders about, do they want that with their boss? Everybody says yes, but I don't have time to do it with my people. Like we all already, I'm saying this now, not to you, Mark, to everybody else. Like you already know this is true for you. It's also true for your folks.
A while ago, I was asked to facilitate a strategic planning session for a company, and the CEO knows me, and so it was a very rigorous process to get to what we were actually going to be focusing on in the meeting, right? And I had a very clear agenda. Everybody bought off on the agenda. They knew exactly what we were going to be doing. And so, we're going to be together for 2 days. And so I said, hey, everyone, I just want you to go around the room. And before we get going, I want you to tell me one thing that you accomplished this year that you're the proudest of. Like, what's the one that just makes your heart sing, if you will? And I get this look from the CEO, like, how are we going to do? Like, really, you're going to do that? And it was just like that. Imagine the joy people going around the room talking about and what I'm doing and why I would even ask that question. Because what I'm trying to do is to set people up and to be sitting in an experience of major positive emotions. They're thinking about what their greatest accomplishment was, and they're hearing everybody else's, knowing probably they played a role in it because they work together all the time. So now I'm going to get this frenzy of positive emotions, and instead I get the, hey man, stick to the knitting here. We got a lot of work ahead of us to do, not understanding. And this is where the confusion lies. This is where it derails. Yeah. It has to be authentic. You have to be willing to put in the time, and you have to fundamentally understand the impact that it has.
And when you fundamentally understand the impact, you know that it's a tremendously wise investment, right? But it's an investment, not an expense, if you want to look at it that way, right?
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing you prompt me to think about. It's our minds that are telling us, get back to work. Yep. It's the heart that says, I need to spend time with this person to get to know them a little bit more, right? But the mind's going, waste of time, buddy. Get on to your work. You have a strategic plan to be working on here. You're going to run out of time. You're not going to have a good plan. So knock this shit off. Pardon me, I've used it twice, but that's what they say to me. That's what they think. And it's like instantaneously, stop doing that. But these are the experiences that matter to people, because how we make our people feel truly is our influence. Not anything we say to them, how we make them feel.
Yeah, I love that example. And I know that you and I could have a much longer conversation, and I think we would both enjoy it a great deal. I know I've enjoyed it so far. But before we go into and start to round out our time together, Mark, is there something else that you wish I would have asked, or that you feel compelled to share before we start to wrap up?
We're really talking about, so I want to make sure, thank you for asking the question. So I want to make sure people understand we're not talking about Cupid. We're not talking about Valentine's Day. We need to be grown up to understand. And by the way, this idea of heart-led leadership, leading with heart, all of a sudden is sort of taking off. I'm sure you've seen it and you've heard it, but everyone is using it as a metaphor, and I'm not. And this is why it's so important. If you understand that the heart is involved in influencing our choices and our behavior from a biological standpoint, which is why, right?
So for those of you that aren't watching, I'm pointing to the book, and in the center of this book that says "Lead from the Heart" is a picture of the organ in our body that's the heart. There's not a Valentine heart on the cover of this book. So get back to your point about biology.
It's an anatomical heart. So if we understand that human beings are wired this way, that feelings truly influence our behavior, the idea of the heart no longer has the charge that it did. Even when people are using it as a metaphor, it's still conveying softness and weakness, and I don't have time for this, and I shouldn't have to do this as a manager. People have a job and they're getting paid for it. They know I like them and I don't have to appreciate them. All of that kind of stuff. That's the mind. So when I'm saying lead from the heart, I'm saying really, if you understand human nature, you'll apply these practices because this is what brings out the best in people. That's really it. And I will tell you something interesting, and I was reluctant for a second, but it's okay. Just to show you how easy it is to make that leap, that it's something weak. When I gave my book to my publisher and they came back with their proposed cover, they had a black laptop with a red romantic heart on that was their cover. And they said, "We're pleased to give this to you." So as you can see,
you said, "I am not pleased to receive."
I was astonished. But what I'm telling the story, not to embarrass them, but to point out that they hadn't read the book. The woman who was doing the design had not read the book. So her assumption of what I meant had to be, he's talking about Valentine's Day, right? And this is the same understanding that we have in the world. Like that wasn't she wasn't the only person, right?
She was just reflecting the pervading view.
The idea sounds like romance to me. It sounds like Valentine. And I'm saying, and so interestingly, my son and wife, but principally my daughter-in-law was the one who designed that cover. And all I wanted on it was the anatomical heart. And you could see that she did the reverse imagery of it so that you can actually look at it like an X-ray, which makes me very happy because it gives you a very scientific look at the heart, which is what we're talking about. Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question.
You are very welcome. So before we go, I've got a couple of things I want you to tell us about you. So what do you do, Mark, for fun?
That's fun. So I haven't had a whole lot of fun. I had my book come out this year. So of course there was writing and editing and then all that comes with it. But in order to, I will say that this actually turns into fun. But I live near the beach. And so I get up 4:30 every morning and I walk the beach for at least an hour in the dark by myself. Invariably, I'm the only person out there. And, 2 hours later, it's filled with people. And just the idea of having that rhythm, that consistency, that sort of walking meditation, it kind of sets me up in a way that I've never really felt before. I used to go to the gym and you hear the bump, bump, bump and all the lights. And it's like, it's an assault on your being. Now it's just a much more, thoughtful way of starting my day, thinking about what I want to accomplish, just thinking about everything. And so that's a big one for me. Walking has become a huge thing for me. I do it every single day now, most of the time on the beach.
Perfect. And the only question you knew I was going to ask you is this one. Well, you might know the next one too, but this is the only one I told you, and that is, what are you reading these days?
So I have my own podcast, and like you, I do a lot of preparation for it. And so up until about 2 weeks ago, every single Sunday, I lie on my bed and I read a book cover to cover. That's principally my podcast guest. That's the only way I can do it. It's the only time I have. And so I just was on a business trip. I was speaking last week, and I told my wife, and I said, I don't have anything to read, which wasn't true, but I didn't have anything to read because my podcast just ended. And she's like, is that the end of the world? Like, all you've been doing, but
well,
so
I mean, it is, yeah.
It felt like it. I had plenty to do, but as it turned out, I did not have a book with me for the first time for a really long time. So, but the answer to your question is the books that I have read lately that had big influence on me. One is actually one that you triggered a minute ago, which is a book called Both End Thinking. And it's written by two business school professors. One's a dean. Their names are Smith and Lewis. And another one is, and this is one that I read the original a long time ago. And I just had, the name of the book is True North. Bill George, who's a professor emeritus at, he's a fellow at the Harvard Business School, former CEO. He wrote this book called True North. He was on my podcast. It's the final of the season, and I've had more people give me commentary on this than anything. But it's a great book about defining your values and who you want to be and what you want your legacy to be as a leader. And then finally, the book that is there. Let me see.
It's right there.
There you go. That's it. That's the new one. That's it. That's the book. You are clairvoyant.
If I look over here for a second, I could show you the Both End Thinking book because I have it as well.
If all right, there's one more. If you have this one, you're going to freak me out. It's called Belonging by Jeff Cohen, and you don't have it, so I'm like actually pleased because you were kind of scaring me there. You had everything we were talking. So I'm
familiar with the book, but I cannot put my hand on it for you at this moment.
No worries. But this is a really powerful book because I have been, getting a lot of let's just say negative feedback from people saying that I'm totally wrong about working from home. I believe that hybrid is the future, but I also believe that we have to spend time with people regularly. We need human connection. The heart is wired to thrive on connection. We can't be working from our homes 100% of the time. It's not good for any of us. It's not good for business. It's not good for us personally. It's not good for our teams. But this book by Stanford University psychologist Jeff Cohen pretty much makes the case that scientifically we're already seeing the harm that working away from one another is doing.
Well, and we had a lack of connection and loneliness. We had an epidemic of loneliness before we had a pandemic.
Correct. Right.
Without question. So here's the question you've most wanted me to ask the entire time, Mark. Where can we learn more? Where can you point people to get the book? Where do you want to point people, et cetera?
I thought this was a trick question, but it's not. So the name of the book is Lead from the Heart. That's the easiest way. My name is Mark C. Crowley. You can find it anywhere. Amazon is the cheapest and the fastest. And my website is markccrowley.com. Turns out there's another Mark Crowley out there. So I inserted the C a long time ago. And we get each other's mail because people forget the C. So markccrowley.com. You can find me. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, all with Mark C. Crowley.
And everybody, now, before we wrap up, I have a question for all of you. Most of you not with us live, most of you listening at some later point. But the question is just as important as if you were right here, right now. And that is, now what? What action will you take as a result? If you agree with the point that feelings and emotions drive human behavior, what are you going to do to lead and connect and hire and inspire differently because of that? There were plenty of things for you to take action on today. I hope that you will not just say, hey, this was good. I mean, I hope you'll go listen to Mark's podcast, and I hope that you'll come back and listen to more episodes here. But what we most hope is that you will lead differently because of this conversation. And I hope that you will do that. I hope that you will take that action, because if you do that, the very best will come for you and your team. Mark, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to have you.
Been a great honor, Kevin. Thank you so very much.
And everybody, we will be back next week with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. I hope you'll join us then. Thanks so much.